Welcome to Chess to Impress, and today's lesson number 15, is about advancing. Advancing in chess is all about taking control of your opponent's side of the board. When I say the words opponent's side of the board, I usually mean taking control over the central line. The central line is between ranks 4 and 5. The line that divides rank 4 and 5 is known as the central line. The more space you control, the harder it is for your opponent to move. Can white advance on black's position by safely putting a piece over the center line? Again, this is a visualization experiment or an exercise wherein just we are trying to understand what advancing is. So what we need to do is advance our pieces over the central line, the line which divides rank 4 and 5. Always remember, whenever we advance by putting our pieces on safe squares. For example, bishop b5 is a move wherein we advance because the bishop is going over the central line. If you had to take a look about, if you had to take, if you had to advance this bishop, the squares in red are all the squares where the bishop can advance safely. The square h6 is not the correct square because if you go to h6, the pawn takes it. What about this knight? Yes, the knight can advance on g5 and e5 because we're going above the central line. Even this knight on c3 can advance on b5 and d5 because we're going above the central line. Apart from these four pieces, pause the video. Is there something else? Is there any other chessmen which can advance by crossing over the central line? Yes, the move is pawn to e5, right? So these are the 5 pieces which can advance safely. Why do we advance? Because we want to take control over the opponent's side of the board. Advancing usually helps us put more pressure, and advancing will help you overpower in one way or the other and eventually help you win the game. All the exercises today are visualization exercises. Again, see, imagine you're playing as white, right? You've got these two open files, D file and the E file, and you really want to put more pressure. You want to advance. You want to take control of your opponent's side of the board. So there are many pieces you have which may or which can advance. You need to choose the right ones. For example, if I had to maybe advance this rook, I would love to play the move rook d7 because not only does the rook advance, but it also goes on the 7th rank, which is the best place where the rook can be, where the white rook can be. The rooks are strong on the 7th rank. Similarly, the black rooks are strong on the 2nd rank. So I would play a move like rook d7, right? Or maybe a move like rook e7. Rook e5 is also fine, not bad, but even better is rook e7 because it actually makes a lot of sense. It puts more pressure on these pawns. Not only that, in the future, maybe if they do not play the move rook d8, you can just double up and create a battery on the 7th rank. Well, talking about this knight, where do we place our knight? Now this is of vital importance. Your knight can go to g5 or e5, right? Imagine you had to move your knight. Where would you move it, e5 or g5? In case you're thinking about g5, then that's an error. I'll tell you why. Let's say if you were to move your knight on g5. The knight on g5 is almost near the corner of the board. So the knight will only control 6 squares. Correct? The knight has its hold over 6 squares. Whereas when you move the knight to e5, you control 8 squares. So that's why always place your knight, or always make sure that your knights belong in the center. Cool. Let's go to position number 3. Alright, this is an exercise just for you. Find at least 2 ways that white could advance on their opponent's position. There are actually 4 ways, but just think about any two you like. I'll tell you all 4 of them. Alright, so the first move is with the bishop. The only safe square where the bishop can advance is to go bishop a6. The second move, maybe the second piece with the knight. Yes, the knight can advance on e5 and g5, but given a choice, I would definitely choose e5 because the knights are strong pieces in the center. And any other piece which can move apart from these or which can advance apart from these, yes, there is this pawn. A sneaky little pawn can go to e5 and directly confront the opponent's knight. Awesome. Now let's take a look at the final position. I find this position really interesting because not this position, maybe this is an ordinary position, but yeah, this position, right? This position is very interesting because this is an end game. It is where many of your pieces have been captured, and in an end game your king usually does not have to worry about getting checkmated because the biggest pieces are gone. This means your king is strong and your pawns are too. A good plan in this position for white is to advance in this endgame using the king, which means you can use this king as a weapon, right? If you just evaluate this position, I can clearly see that these two pawns are a weakness because they're double pawns. They're stacked on top of each other. They can be easily attacked. But how do I attack them? I attack them by gaining more space by using my king as an attacker, which we usually don't. But since it's an endgame, all the heavy pieces are not available, you can advance with your king. So let's see what happened in this game. This is again just an example. King d4. Of course, we're trying to go as close as we can to those two weak pawns on the a file. They play king a8, king d5. We are trying to advance. They play king d7, knight e5 check. Right? The knight forks the king and the pawn, which means the king needs to go back on e8 in order to protect it. And we start king c6. We're just like 2 blocks away. f6 doesn't matter. Just save the knight for now. King d8, and then goes king b7. Now these two pawns, one of them is gonna fall. Whatever they do, you can either play king captures a7 or you can play king captures a6. Each to its own. I say I'll play king a7, king c6, king captures a6. You're up by 2 pawns, and these 3 pawns are gonna storm and promote itself to a queen. So always remember, why do we advance? We advance in order to put more pressure, we advance in order to gain more control of your opponent's side of the territory, and we advance because eventually it will help us overpower our opponent's pieces and help us win the game.